Hey, what's going on, fam? Another real quick video. I want to talk about two topics in one. I want to talk about S Lee Merritt, the lawyer. I want to make a part two video because there's some extra lies that I've noticed from him since I made my last video. And I also want to talk about the Joshua Brown case, the witness in the uh, Amber Geiger trial who was murdered almost immediately after the trial, who testified against her. So first, let's go ahead and talk about the brother Joshua Brown. So for those of you who don't know, he was a witness in the trial of Amber Geiger. He testified against her. He was used as a prosecution witness, and he was shot dead going into his apartment, the same apartment that he lives in where Botham Jean lived, who was killed. He was killed like as he was leaving, exiting his car. He was ambushed. So this wasn't a robbery. This wasn't a domestic dispute. Somebody was targeting him. Whoever it was targeting him. Now, of course, everybody, don't be surprised if they try to come up with some crackhead uh, black person who allegedly did it, or some mentally ill black person who allegedly did it. If they come up with that, I'm going to be very suspicious. If they come up with some mentally ill or crackhead random black person off the street, or some random gangbanger who probably has a million other murder charges on them. Um, they need to come with somebody who's, I don't even know who they can come with, but somebody who's a believable witness, because obviously, as we all know, it's extremely suspicious. It looks like Dallas PD most likely had something to do with it. Uh, of course, we don't know for sure, but it looks like that. It very, very much looks that way, especially those of us who understand how white supremacy works. Um, our first instinct, especially a lot of black people we know, it's most likely the Dallas PD that had something to do with it. But whether they did or not, they need to come up with if they come up with somebody who wasn't involved with the police, if they come up with anyone at all. Because first of all, one of the things they may do is play dumb, like, oh, they can't catch the person, which is BS, which will be BS, or B, they'll come up with somebody who it doesn't seem, some random person who had no real motive other than some BS like robbery, which this wasn't a robbery. This was a targeted hit. Like whoever they come up with, basically, it needs to be someone who um, had a motive to target him in the story. But obviously, we don't have all the facts now, so there's not too much more I can say on that. But what I can do is also transition into S Lee Merritt, or as I called him in my last video, Sleazy Merritt. This lawyer, this dude is now, of course, now he's jumped the bandwagon from the Botham Jean case to now he's going to get answers for Joshua Brown, and he's in communication with Joshua Brown's mother and all of this stuff. Listen, S Lee Merritt, you need to stay away from Joshua Brown, because we can see clearly that when you're involved, there's a problem. Based on the behavior of the Jean family and the fact that you allowed that type of stuff to go on and you didn't advise them to stop doing that crap because they keep doubling down on that forgiveness crap, the fact that you were involved in that, you need to stay away from the Joshua Brown case, because some people would say, I'm not going to say myself, but some people say that you are complicit, Mr. Merritt, in Joshua Brown's death. Because when you do all that for plantation forgiveness stuff, it paints a green light, or paints a target on black people and gives a green light to attack us, because it says, hey, black people are weak, they're cowardly. If you attack them, their family members are just going to cry and forgive you, because we've seen this kind of display over and over and over again. So S Lee Merritt, you advising the family to low key uh, do all that pandering forgiveness crap, and like I kind of exposed that in my last video, but I'm gonna expose proof that you were involved in this more than you're letting on, as far as the John family's behavior. I'm gonna prove that further on a little bit later in this video, but before I even start to get into my proof, Mr. Merritt, you need to stay away, because even let's say you weren't indirectly responsible for Mr. John's death. I mean, not Mr. John, but Mr. Brown's death by promoting the John family to do all that tap dancing. You, at the very least, should feel guilty that the fact that dudes, actually, you know what? Let me see. I actually made a tweet about this crap. Hold on. My bad, family. I'm stopping in the middle of making a video to read one of my tweets. Because my tweet says it better than me trying to remember it off the top of my head what I said. Oh yeah. Oh, so what I was saying was, my bad. I forgot my point. So yeah, there we were. So what I was saying was, if you don't feel bad, if you aren't complicit in Mr. Brown's death by encouraging that forgiveness talk, at the very least, Mr. Merritt, you should feel guilty. You should feel guilty for the fact that you were co-signing that forgiveness talk, co-signing the forgiveness of someone whose allies would do something like this. So let's say, Mr. Merritt, your actions had nothing to do with Mr. Brown dying. You still co-signed the John family's forgiveness crap, especially his brother's forgiveness tap dancing. And the person that he was forgiving is a person whose allies would do something like this to Mr. Brown, or possibly do something like this to Mr. Brown. You should feel guilty, at least for that. That you're co-signing the forgiveness of a person whose friends will go out and kill Mr. Brown. But anyway, without further ado, what I also want to do is I want to read some tweets from Mr. Merritt, because I want to read some lies that he told, um, that are blatant lies, and raise even more red flags as to why we should not trust this brother, because something's, not right with this dude, especially with some of the lies he tells. So it's just really not trustworthy. It's really it's just really suspect. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and read these tweets. So there are a few presumptions here that you will have to accept is wrong. And now this is him responding to Tariq Nasheed, who says, who was calling kind of low, in a polite way, basically calling him out for having the Jean family come out here with all this tap dancing. This is Mr. Merritt responding to Tariq. So on Twitter. So there are a few presumptions you have here that tongue tied. There are a few presumptions here that you will have to accept as wrong. One, pushing clients. This statement came as a surprise to everyone, which I would recommend everyone go read my last video. It doesn't sound like it was a surprise, because obviously y'all talked about who was going to make the victim impact statement, and Mr. John Botham's brother. He was saying, I was asked, and then he had to hurry up and correct himself. You can take that how you want, but I kind of take that as a Freudian slip. So you claim, Mr. Merritt, that the statement came as a surprise, but I question that. And I'm going to, show why that's questionable as this video continues. And then number two, he says, the jury had already returned 10 years when Brant made his statement. This is a lie. This is a lie. Number one, and this is where everything else you're saying, Mr. Merritt, comes into question, because that is a lie. Number one, there's video where the jurors are saying that all the forgiveness influenced their sentence. That's number one. So if they had already returned the 10 years when he made his statement, how could that forgiveness influence their sentence that they had already returned? Because remember, the judge didn't hug her until after Brant did. So what other forgiveness were they talking about? Was it the bailiff stroking her hair? That was the only thing? Come on, come on. Number two, go check my last video. Botham's brother was talking about that he was giving a victim impact statement. He said that in the press conference with S Lee Merritt standing beside him. A victim impact statement is, what is it called? Victim impact. How was the victims impacted? Who the people who were affected, the family members of the victim in the case of a murderer. But how are these people affected by this crime? Why is that statement given? Victim impact statement is given in order to help influence a sentence. Anyone can Google a victim impact statements in sentencing, and it will easily tell you victim impact statements are read before the sentence in order to help influence the sentence. That way, if usually a victim impact sentence is read to help make sure that the person gets a harsher sentence by the person who was affected, saying, especially in a murder case, talking about how much they love this person, how much was taken away from them by the loss of this person, how much they're hurt by the loss of this person, and that usually causes a harsher sentence than otherwise may have been given when you talk about a victim impact statement. Or yes, victim impact statements are used to give a more lenient sentence. Let's say it was a real borderline gray area case, and maybe the family member of the person who's dead says, "Hey, even though this was my family member, I think this person, um, maybe it was a self-defense case or something, and they lost, but it was really borderline, and there was a lot of gray area. I'm not talking about these George Zimmerman type where there's no gray area, but they claim there is, but a real gray area self-defense situation. Maybe the person who ended up dead, maybe their family member knows that, hey, maybe it was an abusive husband or something, and they know that, and maybe the wife, killed her abusive husband, but she couldn't, prove self-defense. So maybe the family member says, hey, even though it was my family member, my son, my brother, I kind of know he was abusing her. So even though she deserves to go to jail, be light on her. Not this type of racist coonery that was going on here. But the point is that victim impact statements are not ever read after a sentencing. So the fact that this dude who is a lawyer, this is not some layman who made a mistake. This is a lawyer who is very well versed in how court proceedings work, told what he knows to be a bold-faced lie, which calls into question everything else you're saying, dude. When you're telling these bold-faced lies, it calls into question everything else you're saying. A victim impact statement, the whole purpose of it is to help influence the sentencing, whether it's good or whether it's to make it longer or shorter. That's the whole purpose of a victim impact statement. And uh, Botham's brother already said in his little explain press conference that y'all put out to try to explain his behavior, he already said that y'all had talked about who was going to make the statement before he made the statement. And even though there was this little thing where y'all asked somebody to make the statement, and then y'all had no idea who was going to make the statement, and then all of a sudden he came up in the last minute and decided to make the statement, that doesn't make sense. Plus, we can already see you're lying about when the victim impact statement was made by him, which calls into question everything else you said, including your claims that you had no idea that he was going to say that, especially when it's not normal for y'all to not talk about the victim impact statement before he makes it, when you're their legal counsel. It's not normal. But anyway, I'm going to continue to read this because this dude continues to repeat and double down on this lie, which helps further expose the kind of dude he is. And it shows me that this dude is dangerous for us. The fact that you're lying about a case like this, dude, tells me that you're already extremely suspicious. And a case that's causing people to get killed, like the witnesses, like Mr. Brown, that's causing them to get killed. So the fact that you're lying about a case like this, and a case that's causing other black people to get killed, this dude is dangerous. This Merritt dude is dangerous, and he needs to be moved up out the paint of our community. Everybody who listens to my video, please call this dude out, expose him. He needs to be lose credibility because this dude is putting black people's lives in danger. But anyway, let's read some more of his tweets so I can further illustrate my point. All right, so And then, so someone's calling him out on Twitter for this, but the jurors did state that the family's forgiveness played a major role in their decision making. That is a major problem. And then this person says, that was just someone on Twitter named 6 Foot of ADOS. And Mr. Merritt responds, the jurors lied. Not all of the family is at the point of forgiveness yet. Listen to what his mother has to say. Everyone's testimony is recorded. No one expressed forgiveness. Brandt did not participate in any portion of the litigation. More lies, because again, we just proved how a victim impact statement is never read after a sentencing in a trial. Now, of course, in a parole or probation hearing, it's read after the sentencing or whatever, but it's never read. It is never, ever, ever read after the sentencing in a court case. If the sentencing victim impact statement is read in the court case, in the trial, or after the trial and during the sentencing, it is never written after they sentence. It is always written to influence the sentence. Otherwise, there's no point of a victim impact statement. The victim impact statement was made during the trial to get the person convicted, if that's the case. If it's going to be something that has no impact on the damn conviction, that's BS and that's a lie. So again, everything else that he says is lying. The jurors lie. Not all of the point families at the point of forgiveness. No one expressed forgiveness. Brandt, again, full of lies. And this is Tariq respectfully calling out Mr. Merritt again for more lies. Lee, before the 10-year sentence was announced, Botham's family was instructed to get on the stand and talk about Jesus, church, and Christianity. When I saw this, I wondered, why are the family's lawyers instructing them to do this? This sent a leniency message. And now this is where this dude makes a bizarre admission. I'm a civil lawyer, so damages are important. Emotional trauma is central, actually. I instruct my clients to play up the earning capacity of a decedent and to not be afraid to share their pain and suffering. And then he puts it in quotations like it's fake, like don't be like exaggerate your pain and suffering, like they would need to exaggerate their pain and suffering. They don't need to. What if they want to be private about their grief? They don't need to express their pain and suffering. It's evident. So the fact that you're putting in quotations implies that you are encouraging them to exaggerate their pain and suffering, just like you're encouraging them to exaggerate the earning capacity of the deceased. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind them being told to play up the earning capacity. That's good. That's good advice, and that's a good lawyer. Make sure that you get well, and more than overly compensated, because you can't put a price tag on people's lives, whether they were a doctor or worked at McDonald's. So yeah, I encourage the family to also play up the earning capacity. But that second part where you're putting it in quotations, even if you're even if you don't really need to tell them to play up their pain and suffering because it is indeed genuine, because someone did actually die, the fact that you tweeted it in quotations like it is something fake shows how disconnected you are. How disconnected you are from this movement and from these people and from the real pain that people experience in loss. And share their pain and suffering. And also, again, it further confirms that with the behavior of Jean's family, it shows that they kind of weren't really suffering that much on the loss of their son. They're more happy about the financial windfall that's come as a result of his death. So maybe that's why you subconsciously allowed yourself to put pain and suffering in quotations, because you know that the pain and suffering from the Jean family was fake anyway, because look at their behavior after he's dead. They're more concerned with the check that they're going to receive and more happy about the check they're going to receive than they're sad about Botham's death. I'm not saying they're not sad about his death, but if you have to weigh the levels of feelings, the happiness brings down the sadness just enough for them to betray their sons, to betray their son and their brother after he's dead by forgiving his killer, and therefore giving a green light for more black people to be killed. And again, S Lee Merritt, let's say I'm totally wrong and I'm totally off base to say that you indirectly caused Mr. Brown's death. You still need to stay your ass away from the case because you co-signed the behavior that green lights Mr. Brown's death. But here, hey, we're not done quite yet with the video because Mr. Merritt repeats his lie on multiple occasions. He repeats his lie on multiple tweets. Let me see where I can find where he repeats it again. Okay. Oh, okay. I thought he repeated his lie, but I guess I don't see. But still, he still tells that lie. Um, he still has this one lie about the jury had already returned 10 years when Brant made his statement. So again, that's really pretty much it, family. But this dude is a liar, and the fact that you would lie about a case like this that's caused someone else's death, that alone should raise red flags in anyone whose intelligence head. So again, family, this sleazy Merritt, S Lee Merritt dude, he needs to be out the paint. The fact that he's trying to be, Johnny on the spot for this Joshua Brown case is offensive because, again, depending on how you look at it, you could say he caused Mr. Brown's death by encouraging the family to do that plantation forgiveness stuff, which greenlighted Mr. Brown's death and will greenlight other black people's death. Or at the very least, he co-signed it after the fact that they chose to do it, which basically means he co-signed the actions that led to Mr. Brown's death. So either he directly encouraged the actions, or at the very least, he co-signed the actions. And the fact that he's doing this both sides of the fence and trying to play like he had nothing to do with them forgiving and they just said it on their own, but yet you're co-signing their forgiving, but then you're trying to turn back around and say that you don't really co-sign the forgiving, but you respect their choice and their way of grieving. You're talking out of 8 sides of your mouth, Mr. Merritt. You're talking out of 8 sides of your mouth. You're suspect. You're very, very suspect. And we don't want you around us because you're putting our lives in danger. And you already put Mr. Brown's life in danger to the point where he's dead now, Mr. Joshua Brown. And I just want to end the video by saying, rest in peace, Mr. Brown, because I know I spent most of the video, rest in peace, Joshua Brown, because I spent most of the video talking about sleazy Merritt. But he needed to be talked about. But, brother, you also need to be remembered for the sacrifice that you made in telling the truth in the Botham John case. But anyway, like, share, subscribe. Peace.